Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago, one of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose, as long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we are going to be talking about what we consider positions of need for the Bears. We're going to be talking about Cubs baseball, White Sox baseball, all that good stuff. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. Sure, the season is over now, but that shouldn't stop you from heading on over to icehogs.com. Get yourself a hat, shirt, jersey, sign up for season tickets next year, and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Alex, how are you doing on this gorgeous Sunday afternoon?
Oh, doing just fantastic. You want to talk about great weather today and Friday. Like Friday, you could not have asked for better weather, I don't think.
Yeah, this has been perfect. Like, it's sunny, but it's not overbearing. The temperature is warm, but not hot. You get a nice little breeze. Love it.
Yeah, and the nice thing too is that we went to the Cubs game, my dad and I, on Wednesday night, and it was a little cooler. We brought our jackets and everything, but there was no breeze, there was no rain, there were no clouds in the sky, there was nothing threatening whatsoever. So this is the time of year where it is just ideal to go to a baseball game because, when you get to August, it gets kind of hot. It could get really, really hot during the day. And then obviously in April and May, you get rain, you get cold weather. Sometimes you even get flurries like on opening week. Like, I think June is the best time to watch baseball.
I would say June is pretty awesome. When you get into mid-July and August, it's real hot. It's real hot. Especially if you get one of those blazing hot days and the sun's beating down and there's no shade. At least at Wrigley, there's places where you can sit and get the shade.
Mm-hmm.
Covers you up if it rains. But if you go in the bleachers, man, you are there at the mercy of whatever Chicago weather there is.
Okay, question for you. What was the hottest Cub game or sporting event in general you ever went to?
It was definitely a Cubs game. Sat in the bleachers, and I went and I bought a floppy hat because there was nobody selling sunscreen, and I was like, I'm just gonna get sunburned. So I bought a floppy hat, which I never wore ever again, but I just needed to cover up my head and my face and the back of my neck.
Do you still have this floppy hat by any chance?
I don't. It was terrible though. I mean, it may as well have been a sunbonnet.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, when you're in the bleachers, you're getting no mercy from the sun. If the sun is out, it's on you. Left field, right field, center field, doesn't matter. Unless you go down or you're under the scoreboard up there, you're getting the sun.
Yep.
And I don't know if you've been to that area in center field, the batter's eye, that indoor private area. I've never actually been in there. I don't know if you have, but
I have not.
But outside of there, unless you're in the concourse, there's no cover whatsoever. And even if you're under those scoreboards, it kind of doesn't matter because you either have to stand up there and you have to stand all the way in the back, or else you're still going to be in the sun.
Yeah, I love the bleachers, but you gotta choose the right day. It can't be raining because you're stuck. It can't be blazing hot because you're stuck. It's um at the end of last season, I took my stepdad for his birthday to a Cubs game, and the weather was perfect. It was like I want to say like 7:05 start. It was an evening start, and the sun was still out, but it was starting to set. You started getting the the cool breeze off the lake, and probably by about the sixth inning, seventh inning, um, I put on a light sweatshirt, and I was like, this is perfect. There was not a cloud in the sky, and there was no sun beating down on you, and it was nice weather during the early parts of the game. By the end, you put on a little jacket just because you're sitting there, not, if you're walking around, probably perfectly fine in t-shirt, but with just sitting there, with the wind off the lake, got a little chilly, but it was, with a light jacket, it was perfect. So it was phenomenal. And I was like, I could not have asked for better weather.
Yeah, you always gotta love those. I think the hottest Cub game I ever went to, it was in 2018. It was the series against the Twins when like a million runs were scored, and like the heat index on the field was like 108, 110, maybe even more. And we were in the bleachers for that. It was a great game. We won, scored a lot of runs, but yeah, that was a really hot one. And that was one of those games where you wished you had one of those Disney World fans, with like the spray bottle. It's like you got the spray
Hmm.
bottle, you got the fan. Like that would have been a perfect day for one of those.
Yeah, it's usually I like to sit on like the lower level, or with underneath the upper level, that like deck. I like to sit there because you you have the shade from the sun. You get, if it starts to rain, you don't go anywhere. Um, that's my preferred seat at this point in my life.
Yeah, no, that's a good spot.
Um, while we're here, you want to just jump into Cubs baseball?
Sure, why not?
I mean, you know, this week has been a little ups and a little downs, I would say, for Cubs baseball. Um, you split a 4-game set against the Brewers. That could have been a disaster. And potentially splitting a series against the Cardinals, which again could have been a disaster. But um, you know, you get a game where Stroman just gets lit up.
Yeah, and it was one of those games where he started off so well. Like the stuff with Crisp, he was striking out guys. You're like, all right. Then you go up 3-0 on the Patrick Wisdom home run. You're feeling pretty good. And then it just fell the fuck apart.
You know, it's funny. I think as Cubs fans, we were pretty darn excited about signing Marcus Stroman. Would you say that's fair?
Oh, absolutely.
And so far, he's 2-5 with a 5.32 ERA.
It's frustrating because after a rough start, it legitimately looked like he was coming around. Like if you actually look at the stats over the past few games, he was pitching really well. I mean, he came off a 7 shutout performance, and then he was doing well before that too. And then just the numbers blew up again, and everything looks really, really bad now. And I wish that I wish he could have, if he would have given up like 4 or 5, it's like, okay, that's not good, but it could have been worse. Whereas, when you're giving up 9, that's just that. I think that was like the worst start of his career.
It might be. It was bad. It went off the rails real quick.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's happening. Um, and honestly, like The Cubs have had some real ups and downs with pitching. You've had Kyle Hendricks, who has just been not good overall this year. Justin Steele is giving you not much.
I think he's given you some good, but it's also gone awry. Like he's had some legitimately good starts, and his month of May was great until that Reds game. There's just no consistency there.
Yeah, and he's pitching great tonight
so far.
But I mean he's got 4. But he's got 4 innings. Is what's the most innings he's gone in a game this year?
He might have gone 6 once, but he doesn't go very deep. And you got to think too that third time through the order, things could get, tonight. I mean, especially when you have a top of the order like the Cardinals have. I don't know if he's a starter long term. I think that if he wants to be a starter long term, it would be beneficial for him to add a third pitch. He's definitely a valuable arm, I feel, because remember when he was in the bullpen last year, he was pretty dang good. And he's had some good starts, but you're just not seeing the consistency there. I'm fine with him just go out there this year, start, see what a full year does for that, and then you evaluate from there. Really the only consistent starter, and he hasn't even been a starter since day one so far, has been Keegan Thompson.
Well, Keegan Thompson has just been pretty overall great this year.
Yeah, he has.
He's by far and away the best Cubs pitcher this season so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, Robertson has had his moments, but Keegan Thompson has just been flat out the best pitcher.
Yeah, no, I mean, what's cool is that he's looked good as both a starter and out of the bullpen. Like in every role he's come in, he's looked good so far. Is there going to be, I think, an adjustment period where maybe things don't look always as good? Yeah, I think that's coming. But, when you're a young player, that's going to happen. But you can't take away from what he's done so far. He's done some really good stuff. And I just wish this rotation had any sort of consistency. I mean, the most frustrating, at least the saddest, I think, far and away, is Kyle Hendricks. Like, he is just not that guy anymore. Even because he pitched the game that I went to, 3 runs in 5 innings. Okay, that's not bad, but if you just sat and watched him pitch, like it wasn't very good. It just wasn't. And you saw earlier this year, there were glimpses where he looked like Kyle Hendricks. And then he would go back to the ways of last year where he was just getting creamed. I think we're just at that point. Kyle Hendricks isn't the professor he once was. You're not going to get that consistency. I just think we're past that.
Question here. Do you think Kyle Hendricks is a tradable asset at the deadline?
Technically, yes. I don't think you're going to get much, though they did get Anderson Espinoza for, what was it? Jake Marisnick last year. I mean, I think technically he is, with his reputation and his postseason experience. You'll get something. I just don't think it's going to be anything of note. I mean, is it really worth trading if you're not going to get much? You know what I mean? It's kind of hard to say. If he was pitching like he was normally, I would say absolutely yes. But even if he was pitching normally, you have to ask yourself this question. Would a guy like Kyle Hendricks, despite his reputation, despite his postseason numbers, despite all that, you look at him and you're like, all right, he doesn't throw hard. He throws 88 tops. Are you willing to give up a big package for that, regardless of how good you're pitching? I think teams are naturally weary of soft tossers now for good reason. We're in an era where power means everything. So to answer your question, very long and scattered around, technically, yes, I just don't think you can expect anything huge.
I mean, as a back end rotation guy, I think he could be reasonably valuable to somebody. And he's under team control for what, 2 more years?
Yeah, I know there's like a 1.5 million buyout either next year or the year after. So he's got control. He's got experience.
The salary is not that bad.
The salary's not bad. I mean, everything around the current stats says there's a lot of value here. Like the overall resume, the value, the control, all that value's there. And that's why you can get something. It's just, you're not trading a Max Scherzer. You're not trading a Steven Strasburg. You're not even probably trading a in prime Jose Quintana at this point. Again, if this was a year or two ago, it's a different story. But, if he was pitching to, like, let's say a 3.6 ERA, a 3.8 FIP this year, you'd say, okay, this is much more normal of Kyle. And you could kind of brush off the one bad year. Unfortunately, the trends, it's over a year sample size of negative trends, even with good starts sprinkled in there. So this is where you kind of discuss this and you're like, where is the real value? You and I can both agree it's not worthless, correct? Not worthless.
Correct.
It's just, where is that value and is it worth it?
I mean, I would at least be having the conversations.
Oh, I agree.
Because
100%.
Because the fact is that he is not going to be a valuable member of the rotation when you're good again.
And, it's like, you look at the numbers, the FIP and the ERA are both over 5. Like, that is just flat out not good. Even if he had like a 4.30 FIP and like a 3.95 ERA, I would feel significantly better about him. Wouldn't you agree?
I would definitely agree on that.
I mean, what sucks is that when he takes the mound now, you just don't know what you're going to get. Because remember those back-to-back starts on the road in Arizona and in San Diego? He looked like Kyle Hendricks.
Mm-hmm.
Then he came back home and he got absolutely shelled.
Yeah. So, I mean, my thinking is, unless, I mean, even if you go out and you're spending money in the off season, which I am just reading reports today that somebody was like an anonymous GM or something was saying that they guarantee that the Cubs will get one of the top 3 shortstops or whatever.
Yeah, I saw that too.
But I think the feeling is that the Cubs will be big spenders this offseason. Now, whether that happens or not, I don't know. But even if the Cubs are big spenders in this offseason, what does keeping Kyle Hendricks matter either way? Because at this point, the way he's pitched over the last couple seasons, he's at best a back end of the rotation guy. He's not a front end of the rotation starting pitcher in baseball right now.
Right. I mean, you're not going to have him as your ace or even your number 2 going forward. And the frustrating thing about Marcus Stroman is I was never quite sure if they were going to trade him or not. He's on a multi-year deal, but could you imagine if Marcus Stroman was pitching absolutely lights out and teams were knocking on the door with big offers? I mean, I don't think you're going to see that now, but let's just say for all intents and purposes, Marcus Stroman is here next year. All right. Let's just play that scenario like this.
I think that's the likely scenario.
Right. I agree. So we'll play it like that. Ideally, Caleb Killian is going to be a full-time starter. We're obviously going to talk about Caleb Killian more.
We are. Yep.
You figure he's going to be in there. Maybe Jordan Wicks is on his way up by next year. I'm not saying this year, but
I would say that's probably I'm not going to say a safe bet, but it's a pretty solid bet.
Yep, I would agree. You're going to bring somebody in via free agency. I feel good or bad, you're going to.
and I don't even know if it's going to be a top end guy, but
No.
I mean, you're going to bring in somebody.
I mean, you'll probably bring in multiple guys, whether it's big names, small names, middle names, whatever. You're going to bring in guys. So, we'll see how this year plays out. If Kyle Hendricks kind of finds enough where he pitches to like average numbers and he doesn't get traded, okay, then you keep him for another year. If it continues like this, then I think you have to look at other options. Though he is under contract, they might try what they can to get value from him trade wise. And look, I don't want to see Kyle Hendricks go, but I also feel like there has to come a point where you're like, you know what? If this keeps continuing, we're just flat out not getting his best anymore. I mean, he was very good for very long, but it's just harder now to survive as a soft tosser. It just is.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. And, I'm not saying I'm super pro trading Kyle Hendricks. I'm just saying that's probably the right thing to do at this point, because he's what, 32?
I don't even think he's that old.
Let's see.
He's like, it's not like we're talking about a 35, 36-year-old. It's like, we're not talking about John Lester here, a few years ago, where it was obvious that once he was a free agent, he was gone.
Kyle Hendricks age. He is going to be 33 in December.
Really? He's that old?
Yep.
Well, shit. Then I was thinking he was 31. That's what I was thinking for some reason.
So, I mean, he's at that point now where, is he going to get better? No. So if you can get hot going into the trade deadline, I would flip him, because he's not going to get better. And, you get $14 million off your books. Now, you probably eat some of that, but you get a bunch of money off your books. You don't have to worry about his declining stuff. And you're probably not competing next year either. I think probably earliest is that 2024 season. And, you get something from him. But I mean, realistically though, is if you do move him at this trade deadline, that would leave you with one player from your World Series team.
And I'm saying he might be traded too.
Well, I'm saying one because saying Jason Hayward, because I'm assuming Wilson Contreras is gone.
Yeah, technically, yeah.
I'm assuming
you're right.
He is gone. But you will have Jason Hayward, and who knows, maybe they DFA him.
Yeah, maybe.
Because honestly, this is not a knock on Jason Hayward as a person. What does he bring to this team?
I mean, at this point, you got to let your young guys play. He's not bringing you that Gold Glove defense anymore. Not saying he's a liability out there, but he's not the same defender. He can't hit. Like, why in the world are you, keeping him? Like, you got to pay him the money either way. And he's going to be 34. Yeah, he's got 1 year left after this one. And, you got a lot of outfield prospects, and, you want to see what Nelson Velasquez could do at some point.
Yeah. I mean, you signed his replacement when he had 2 years left on his deal.
Yeah, it's, we also look to at the play of Clint Frazier, and he's been playing a lot better recently. And I don't know if we're going to have a lot in Clint Frazier, but you got to let him play too. Just see what you have there.
Like I said it before, is and Justin Steele giving up runs.
2 outs, nobody on, and the Devil Birds come up with God. No matter what the score is, you always know they're going to weasel their way back into a game. They could be down 10-0, and then they'll hit like 15 infield singles and then take the lead. That's just what they do.
Hate that stupid team.
I hate that they got Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt for absolutely nothing.
Nothing. They got him for
nothing.
A bag of balls.
Yeah. Only they would get that. And yet we had to pay how many top prospects for a number of players?
At least they haven't won. And they're not going to win this year either.
Oh, I wouldn't be so sure.
Book it. Cardinals are not winning the World Series this year.
I don't know.
Book it.
The lineup's pretty good.
Book it.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to freaking kill you when they do.
Yeah. So I mean, I would be pro flipping Kyle Hendricks, and it's not. There's nothing personal. It's just I think it makes smart baseball sense. Is a contender team that's a back end of the rotation guy that can give you some solid innings for the rest of the season, and in a pinch, you could put him in a playoff game because he's got a ton of experience and his numbers in the postseason are pretty darn good. So would you get a ton for him? Probably not. But, I don't see what his role is going forward for the Cubs. You're going to have to reconfigure that rotation. I mean,
yeah,
again,
absolutely.
if we're talking the 2024 season being the first time that you can be competitive, let's see, he's going to be what I say 33 this year or 33 this year, and then 34. That year he'll turn 35 years old. So what is he bringing you at that point? This is probably at the end of this contract is probably the end of his career.
Yeah. I
mean, nobody's going to sign him as a starter probably. And you're definitely not bringing him in the bullpen.
It'll be interesting to see how the rest of this plays out. It's just you look at the trends, and I want what's better, but you don't like to see where the trends are going.
Agreed. And then, I mean, we've got the good and the bad of the future here. Is the bad the Brennan Davis news?
That's terrible news. I know people are
devastating.
Brutal news. That's a whole year of development gone. And I know the surgery itself, it's nothing like repair or anything or like replace, but that is a whole year of development playing gone.
Have they officially said he's done for the season?
I don't think it's official, but at the very best scenario, he comes back towards the end.
Have they even said what the surgery is?
They did. I didn't really look extensively into what it was, but it wasn't like a disc or like any sort of like muscle. Like it seemed pretty basic. So it's the surgery and the injury could have been worse. It's less of that and just more of that's a lot of time not to play. And it's pretty clear he's going to be out for a while. This isn't like it's just going to be a 1 month thing. It's going to be much longer than that.
Yeah, I'm nervous. I'm hoping this is a blip and not a um, a mar on his career. I hope it's just a blip that we
Me
talk
too.
about. Oh, hey, remember when he had that surgery and it just delayed when he came up?
Yep. Yep. Because, I mean, look, over the past 2 years, we've seen Miguel Amaya hasn't played in since I couldn't even tell you when. Same with Braylon Marquez. Like, you forget they're even still there at this point. And then Ed Howard's done for the year. The Cubs have a lot of prospects. There's a lot of good there, but you hate to see some of these top guys get injured like they have been.
Yep. It's tough. Um, and but the guys that are closer to being quote unquote ready to go, a lot of injuries. And then the other guys are far away. The two brightest spots probably are P. Crow Armstrong, who hit a home run, his first in Double A.
Mm-hmm.
P. Crow Armstrong has been great, and then we've got Caleb Killian, who made his major league debut over the weekend.
And I gotta say, outside the one bad inning, I was pretty impressed with what he did. I mean, he was pumped up early. He strikes out his first two batters. He's pumping in the upper 90s. He's got wicked run on his fastball. He's got great movement on the curveball. There's a lot to like about this kid, and it was really exciting to get to see him pitch on Saturday night. Even I was watching on TV. I wasn't actually there, just to make that clear. But I mean, you saw really good stuff with him. And, one thing right now that he's working on is getting stretched out. So getting stretched out is kind of, I think, part of the process as he goes back to the minors after that start. I think that he's got things that he can look at and be like, all right, this worked, this didn't. I lost my command a little bit in the fourth inning. And, props to him too for after that shaky fourth coming out for a fifth and shutting it down again. I mean, that is not an easy thing to do when you're a rookie pitcher against a good team like the Cardinals. So a lot of props to him for that start. I'm overall very pleased with what I saw. And I'm fine with him going back to the minors. Go get stretched out, tweak a few things. That's a prospect. There's really no reason to rush everything with him. He got a taste of the majors. That's good. Now he's got things to tweak and get stretched out a little more. I can't complain about what we've seen so far.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the box score, you're probably not impressed. But if you watch the game, there was a lot to be impressed by.
And even the box score, you look at modern pitching, these starters aren't going very deep. 3 runs in 5 innings isn't as bad as it once might have been seen as, if that makes sense.
I hear you. But I'm just saying is that if you watch the game, it was a lot more impressive.
Absolutely.
Than what you saw in the box score.
100%.
It gives you hope that you've got a front end starter ready to come up at some point.
Yep.
Sooner rather than later.
Yeah. I mean, it would be really nice if by this time next year, that we have both Caleb Killian and Jordan Wicks in the rotation.
I mean, if you have Stroman, Wicks, Killian, and free agent, that is a rotation that you go, all right, this is a solid rotation here that we can win with.
Yeah.
And the Cubs will have money to spend.
Yes, they have money to spend. They just need to spend it.
It's true. What is their payroll for next year? 2023 salaries and payroll according to Spot Track.
Well, Jason Hayward will be on the books last year. If you don't trade Kyle Hendricks, he'll be on the books. I mean, you'll have Marcus Stroman. You'll have, if you don't extend Wilson Contreras, he's off the books. I think Ian Happ is in his final year of arbitration next year.
So you'll
I mean,
have,
you're gonna have a lot. You're gonna have a lot of money to spend. You'll have a lot of room.
yeah. I mean, if you trade Kyle Hendricks, you have a ton, but you really, it's Stroman, Hayward, Suzuki are your big money. God, too much money for Jonathan VR. But yeah, you're about $100 million. That's a lot of money that you could spend.
We need to sell more pumpkins at Gallagher Way.
Oh, Gallagher Way.
Gallagher Way. We need to sell more pumpkins and we need to sell more merchandise. Come on down to Gallagher Way.
Yeah, they're not gonna keep Jonathan VR for next year, right?
I don't think so.
He's got
I
a
don't think so.
$1.5 million buyout, but his base salary is $10 million. That's just not gonna be a thing.
No, especially when you have some of these guys coming up. I mean, we still haven't even talked about Christopher Morel yet.
No,
Like so far he's here to stay.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's the future leadoff hitter. I mean, he's the current leadoff hitter, but you know what I mean. You've got him. You're going to add bats. You're going to get Suzuki probably adjusting his swing at some point. There's a lot of good things.
I mean, really, Jonathan VR was nothing more than just, hey, here's a veteran. I mean, really. I mean, I liked the Jonathan VR signing when it happened, but it just hasn't gone well this year. I'm like, where's the Jonathan VR that was a pretty solid player with the Brewers?
He stayed there with the Brewers. We got the shadow.
And look, I don't want to make anything personal. I just don't like doing it, but I really don't like seeing Andrelton Simmons take at bats.
No, I don't want him to see any at bats ever again, to be honest with you.
Like, can we have a DH for him? Because he's pretty damn good in the field, but how many rally killing double plays does he hit into? And every time they load the bases or have something cooking, he's always the one up. In games he's playing in, it always has to come down to Andrelton Simmons. Like, he is this year's Daniel Descalso.
But Rivas is a player that we got real excited for, and
it's good.
The wheels have sort of fallen off there.
That might be hey, let's work on a few things in AAA.
Or at least send him on a plane to AAA. And then even if you call him back, I mean, it seemed to work for Frank Schwindel.
Yeah, really. 3 hours in AAA. Maybe do the same thing with Nick Madrigal too. He's got to hit. He just flat out has to hit. And if he's not hitting, send him to AAA too.
Madrigal is, if he's not hitting, he's not worth having.
Right. I mean, you traded your all-star closer for him. And he doesn't have a lot of AAA experience or MLB experience. I still think that it might benefit him just having extended time in AAA. Like, honestly, I wouldn't have minded if, when he was rehabbing from his injury, the second one that put him on the 10-day IL this year, they would have said, hey, let's play you a few weeks here in AAA and maybe work out a few kinks. I would have been fine with that.
I think that would have been the prudent thing to do.
Yeah.
It's a way of optioning him down without wasting an option and without the player saves face is you're like, hey, rehab start.
Though I can't help but wonder if Jonathan VR's injury kind of is like, well, we kind of need someone to play second. I wonder if that factored in, or they just never thought of that. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, at this point, you could just have a fan out there playing and probably wouldn't be too bad. I mean, Madrigal, without looking, do you know what his current OPS is?
Oh God, it's probably like in the 300s.
No, it's not that bad. It's his OPS is 515.
That's still. His OPS. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Oh, you think his slugging?
Yeah.
Oh, his slugging's 250.
Yeah.
His slugging is bad. I mean, the on base percentage is bad. The average is bad.
It's just across the board bad.
It's just, this is not his season.
I don't know if it's the injury. I don't know what, it's frustrating because when he was with the White Sox, and the White Sox fans who listen to the show could tell you he was batting over 300 with them.
Yeah. I don't know what happened. It's not like it's a major move. You move from, a half an hour L ride.
Yeah, I don't know. And the other thing too is, aside from an occasional pop-up, there's very few line drives. There's very few of any of that. It's just everything is just soft grounders.
Yeah. I mean, I think that would have been a prudent move if you could just send him down to the minors for a couple weeks for rehab and let him get those swings in, let him get his confidence back up. Check his eyesight, see if he needs glasses.
Oh, like Vaughn in Major League.
Like your good old pal Sean when he was in Little League. I got glasses and everything seemed to get better.
Yeah, well, sometimes you just need to see better. You could get the same pair that Vaughn had in Major League 1 and 2 with the skull in the middle. Could you imagine little Nick Madrigal wearing those? But honestly, everything that's been most fun about this Cub team has been Christopher Morel and Wilson Contreras. Like, let's be real here.
Yeah, agreed. And I'll be sad when Contreras is gone. But it's inevitable, I think, because there's been no talk of extension. And honestly, I don't know what is fair for him, because he's a catcher, obviously, and he's on the wrong side of 30. So what is his shelf life for being a good baseball player?
Well, that you have this thing called the DH now.
That's true.
And he's played other positions. I mean, I think that bat is so valuable. If he wasn't playing in a modern baseball age where you have a DH, then I think those concerns would be a little more warranted. But now that you have a designated hitter, like you have the option to play him at DH a lot. I mean, honestly, like once you get Yan Gomes back, Yan Gomes should be catching a decent number of the games with Willie as the DH. Yan Gomes, it's a small sample size, but we've seen Yan Gomes work very well with some of the pitchers, including Kyle Hendricks. Like some of his best starts by Kyle Hendricks have been with Yan Gomes.
I mean, all right, let's both agree that his catching days are going to get less and less as he goes on.
Yeah.
No matter where he's playing.
Yeah.
And his first base / corner outfield / DH at bats are going to increase.
Mm-hmm.
what is then a fair market value for that? Because part of his value was he was a great hitting catcher. And when you start taking the catcher out of it, how does that change his value?
Yeah, I mean, you might have to comp to certain players that have similar batting stats. Because, I mean, right now, offensively, he's having a terrific year offensively. Like, he's
Yeah.
doing everything offensively. He's getting on base, he's slugging. You know,
Yeah, he's got 919 OPS.
do you look at what Yordan Alvarez just got with the Houston Astros and you base it something around there? You know, maybe you do. Uh, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be very interesting to see. And you're taking less of a risk, in my opinion. If you're a National League team, like if you're the Cubs, if you were to give them an extension now, you're taking less of a risk now that you have a designated hitter than you were, say, in last year's world where you didn't have a designated hitter. And sure, you could move him to first or you could move him to corner outfield, but you know, how well would he play those positions more consistently is kind of, you know, up for debate. Whereas DH, you don't have to worry about that. You just DH him.
Yeah, we saw today when you move your catcher to play first base that sometimes bad plays can happen that almost
Right.
cost you a game.
Right.
Happened to the White Sox today. So you're right. There are risks to that. You know, DH is probably a better bet for longevity. He is athletic. You could make him a corner outfielder, but then again, you're going to be flush with outfielders coming soon, hopefully. The question is, I guess, does he want to be here?
I think he does. I think he does. The way he's taken over as that leader, you see what he's done with Christopher Morel, right? Like,
oh yeah, the pep talk told him to breathe for
Yep.
the hit.
I loved that. I loved that.
I would be amenable to keeping him, but I also don't want to overpay on him. My approach would be, hey, listen, we want you. Let's let the market dictate. And we'll match whatever the market offer is, but let's let the market decide what your value is and make him work to figure out what his value is rather than just throwing money, because I don't want the Cubs to get into that position where they're just throwing stupid money around.
I don't think they will, because look what Jed Hoyer didn't do. What did he not do last year?
Spend big money.
And who did he not extend?
Anybody.
And look what Baez and Bryant are doing.
Right.
They're not doing jack shit.
And Rizzo looks okay.
He's the only one producing, like in terms of run producing, fine, but the average isn't very good.
No, and a lot of that is because of the park he plays in.
Right.
So I would say that you would not see the same Anthony Rizzo if you had signed him.
No.
I mean, he's got an 800 OPS, which is good.
Good.
It's not great. And how much of that OPS is from home runs to that short porch?
That is a good question. I'm sure a lot of it has to do with that.
I mean, let's just say conservatively, it's 80 points. Then
why don't we go with 83?
83. So would a guy with 215 batting average and a 720 OPS be worth $20 million to you?
Not
year?
That much.
No.
Not that much.
So I'm fine with the fact that they didn't extend any of those guys.
Oh, me too. I'm more than fine. Chris Bryant can't stay healthy. I wonder if Detroit is not letting Javi be Javi, because I think the strikeouts are down, but the average, like the production is just not there. And it's like, well, if you want Javi to do his thing, then you might just let him just swing. Because like even as a free swinger in his prime, he was really good, at producing. You also ask this question too. Was the best thing for Javier Baez Joe Madden? When did he play his best baseball?
With Joe Madden.
Exactly.
See, Chris Bryant this year is batting .270 with a .676 OPS. Do you know how many home runs he has this year?
3?
Less.
2?
Less.
None?
None.
Wow.
He has none home runs this year.
Wow. Yikes. He doesn't play in a hitter-friendly park either.
Nope. And guess how many home runs he hit for the Giants last year?
Chris Bryant?
Yeah.
Wasn't it like 5?
7.
7. Okay, I was close.
So I don't think the Giants were particularly thrilled with the output they got for the trade. So I mean, Chris Bryant has fallen off.
And he's hurt.
So I think that was the smartest thing you did is, can you imagine if you gave that guy $300 million or whatever they were talking about as an extension?
Yeah, that's a big no-no.
It's a big no-no. Dodged bullets on that. I mean, he got stupid money, and now Colorado's stuck with that, and they'll trade him. They'll trade him in 2 years for nothing to the Cardinals, and then he'll figure out how he had to hit again.
Oh God, could you imagine him in a Cardinal uniform?
Being bored.
The ultimate irony.
Oh, Chris Bryant. So, yeah, but I've got actually Cubs tickets for several upcoming games.
So do we. We have the ticket pack.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Yeah, a friend of mine bought season tickets, so he's taken me. And then my mother-in-law bought tickets for just the two of us to go see the Cubs at the end of June. It's the first game of that red series after that other Cardinal series. So I get to see them get routed by the Reds.
Yay. Seen one of the Baltimore games. That'll be kind of fun.
I like I said, Cal Ripken was my favorite player growing up. So the Orioles always have a soft spot in my heart.
Yeah, no, I like the O's.
Yeah,
I'd love to see their stadium someday.
It's really cool. I like it. It's a good stadium.
Yeah, for sure.
Like that's my goal one day when I retire, is to visit every baseball stadium.
Oh man, wouldn't that be awesome?
I mean, I've been to a decent number of them, but I mean, I've been to, I guess, what's the Met Stadium now? City Park?
City Field. Close enough.
I have not been to that one, but I've been to Old Shea Stadium. I've been to Philly Stadium, both the old and the new.
Are you okay from going to Veterans Stadium? Are you okay? Do you have a third arm? Are you radioactive?
So did you hear about the mass shooting in Philly this morning?
Yeah, I did.
That it happened in front of my favorite pizza place.
No kidding.
Like when I lived there, like I ate pizza there all the time, and that happened like right in front. So when I saw the Associated Press's picture, like it's
that
like,
hit close to home for
I'm
you.
like I know that intersection. I have spent ungodly numbers of hours at that intersection, and So it's crazy to see that. It's like although it's 12-hour drive from where I live, it's somewhere that does hit close to home because I spent so much time at that intersection. It was a little wild. Let's see. I've been to Comerica Park and Old Tiger Stadium, Old Comiskey and Guaranteed Rate Field.
I still call it the Cell.
I call it New Comiskey.
Yeah, I wasn't around for the old one, so I have no I remember Old Comiskey. That was before my time.
So I've been to Old Comiskey and New Comiskey. I have been to the Brewers Stadium, obviously Wrigley. I have been to Target Field. I've been to New York a ton of times. I've never been to Yankee Stadium. I've never been to the Blue Jay Stadium or the Rays Stadium. I've been to Fenway. I've been to Camden Yards, Target Field. I've been to the Indian Stadium, White Sox, Tigers. I've never been to the Royal Stadium. Never been to the Astros Stadium. I have been to the Angel Stadium, but I've never been inside. I was there and it was an off day, but I saw the park. Never been to the Ranger Stadium, Mariners, or the Athletics Stadium. Although I was there again, I saw the stadium. Been to the Mets, old stadium, not their new one. Never been to Braves. Been to Phillies. Never been to the Marlins. Been to the Nationals. Been to the Brewers. Never been to the Cardinals.
I've been to the outside of the Cardinals. It's a nice area, I will say. It's a nice area.
I've been to the Pirates, Cubs, Reds. I've been to the Dodgers, Padres. Again, I went to the outside of the Giants Stadium. It's really nice, but I didn't go into a game. Never been to the Diamondbacks or the Rockies. So I think that's a pretty solid number.
Yeah, it's a lot more than I've been to.
It's Texas and Florida. I've never been to baseball games, so it's those take up a big chunk.
And I keep remembering that they got a new ballpark in Texas. They opened it for the pandemic and they had the World Series there because they're no longer at that ballpark in Arlington. And like Turner Field, they converted that to another sporting event field. I think it's a football stadium now.
Yeah, I've never been to Texas at all for anything. So never been to any stadiums they had.
I've been to Texas Roadhouse.
But I forgot to mention you the other was it last week? My buddy texted me. He's like, "Hey, they're doing a one night screening of the Nolan Ryan documentary. Do you want to go?" And I said, yeah. And it was pretty awesome.
I'd love to watch that.
You see just how ridiculously good he was. And to think that the first several seasons of his career, he was terrible until he got to the Angels and started working with the actual pitching coach. If he would have had a pitching coach with the Mets, that guy's stats would have just been untouchable.
And didn't he make his debut in the 60s?
Yes.
And he pitched to the 90s, man.
Yes. But it was hilarious is there was definitely a screen that said Robin Ventura declined to be interviewed for this documentary. But it was really good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And, I got to watch most of the back end of his career as a fan, through the 80s and 90s like that. I got to see how good he was. And it was just incredible how good of a pitcher he was. And he's got stats that are absolutely never going to be broken.
No, I know. No one's going to pitch like that.
Nobody is ever going to touch that strikeout mark. And
it's ridiculous.
I mean, that's like they were interviewing Randy Johnson, and he's like, I've pitched for a long time and struck out a whole lot of people. And he's like, Nolan Ryan has 1,000 more strikeouts than me.
Isn't that nuts? Like that's bonkers. That is absolutely bonkers. Also, let's see.
7 no-hitters.
Yeah, 7 no-hitters. Let's see, how many complete games? 222.
They said he has there was a thing when Pete Rose was honoring him, and Pete Rose said he's like, this man has 48 records in baseball. I mean, some of them are most walks.
Yeah, 2,795 walks. Obviously, strikeouts 5,714. He also has the all-time hits per 9 ratio at 6.6.
I think he has the most losses of all time.
He's got 324 wins, 292 losses. And, the thing about that is he didn't play on a lot of good teams.
No, he played on some terrible teams. But, I mean, the guy was ridiculous.
His only World Series was not technically. He did pitch for the Mets in 1969. He pitched in 10 games, 25 appearances, 10 starts. 3.53 ERA. Other than that, though, he didn't pitch with a lot of good teams. Looking at his postseason pitching, he pitched in one career World Series game. And that was for 2 1/3 innings. So he did pitch in the postseason for that Mets team. So yeah, that ring was earned. But after that, he pitched in the 79, 80, 81 postseasons with the Angels and Astros, and then Astros in 1986 when they lost to the Mets, ironically. And you think about that, okay, that is, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 postseason appearances over how many years of pitching? Over 27 years. 5 and 27 years. You're not on a lot of good teams if that's the case.
Yeah. So the strikeout leaders of all time. So Bert Blyleven is number 5, 3,701. And Bert Blyleven was in my younger days, a guy that pitched for every team, I think. And his were all longevity strikeouts. He was a very good pitcher, but his was longevity. And then Steve Carlton, 4,136. Steve Carlton pitched a long time. It was a very good pitcher. And then Roger Clemens, who arguably might be the best pitcher in the history of baseball, and pitched a long time. He's at 46.72. Randy Johnson, who just was 19 feet tall, and he was throwing 105 miles an hour from 6 feet away because of that arm length, has 48.75. Nolan Ryan has 5,714 strikeouts.
That's crazy. That's just crazy.
I'm reading an article from a couple of years ago, and it said that it said the active leaders in strikeouts are CC Sabathia and Bartolo Colon. And they're the 2 active leaders. If you add their career strikeouts together, they're still 414 shy of Nolan Ryan.
Wow.
So to put it into perspective, this article is from 2018. Clayton Kershaw has led the league in strikeouts 3 times. And at his current pace, he would need to average 225 strikeouts per year, roughly his average for a full season, for 16 more years in order to catch Nolan Ryan. So
that is nuts.
So he'd have to pitch till he was 46 years old.
Wow.
To match Nolan Ryan.
Damn.
Chris Sale in 2018 had 300 strikeouts for the first time. He would have to average 300 strikeouts per year until he was age 44 to catch Nolan Ryan.
I don't think that's happening.
So Nolan Ryan has the most no-hitters, the most one-hitters, the most two-hitters, the most three-hitters.
Down the line, Nolan Ryan.
Nolan Ryan gave up the most stolen bases in history. He has the record for most wild pitches.
It's kind of like Albert Pujols leads the all-time record for double plays. As good of a hitter as he was.
Yeah. But like nobody's ever going to beat his strikeout record. No one will ever beat his walk record.
And I know it's not the all-time record, but nobody's going to pitch up 222 complete games.
And the crazy part is, do you know how many Cy Young awards Nolan Ryan has won?
None, right?
None.
That's wow.
Like in the documentary, Roger Clemens was blown away by that. He's like, how did he never win a Cy Young?
That's crazy to think about.
I mean, it was unreal. The documentary is cool. If you have a chance to check it out, it was really good, and especially if you're a baseball fan, which you are. It was phenomenal, and
yeah, I'll have to check it out.
But to see his career end on an injury just sucked, because that guy probably would have pitched another season or two.
Yeah, absolutely.
Trying to see here. Let's see. He had 1, 2, 3, 4. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. He had 6 seasons of striking out over 300 people.
Yeah, you don't see that much.
It's unreal. In his 40s, he struck out over 300 people in a season.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, he's 43 years old. Unreal. And he beat up Robin Ventura.
And he was in his 40s when that happened, I believe.
He was 46, I believe.
Yeah, yeah.
They definitely talked about that. But he's also married to his high school sweetheart.
Hey, good for him.
But he's still an active cattle rancher.
Why does that not surprise me?
But what was this documentary called? I'm trying to remember. Let me look it up quick. Documentary. Facing Nolan.
Facing Nolan. Okay, I will make note of that.
Yeah, and it was they put it together pretty quickly, because there was at the end of it, they had at the showing I did, it was like the like some of the movie theaters, they'll be like, oh, it was phantom events, and they'll be like one night only. It was one of those. So at the end, they had an additional like Q&A with Nolan Ryan and the filmmakers, and they said that what made them want to do it is they saw the Michael Jordan Bulls documentary, and they were like, we want to do that, with Nolan Ryan. So, they put this together pretty quickly.
Right.
Stream facing Nolan. Seeing if it's streaming anywhere. I don't know, but I saw it in the theater. It was well worth the $16 or whatever. I definitely had a good time seeing it.
Yeah, good.
So yeah, definitely check it out. Everybody listening. It was, even if you don't like Nolan Ryan, it is just like seeing the history of Nolan Ryan and seeing like the evolution of baseball from the 60s to the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why he moved around and becoming the first player to make $1 million a season. It was just a really neat documentary. Should we talk White Sox?
Yeah, we're on baseball, so we might as well.
Might as well. For having a mediocre week for the Cubs, White Sox haven't had the same success. They ran into a buzzsaw Blue Jays team.
Yeah, that series was pretty ugly for the Sox, and I feel like it's a pretty big win for them to come out with a series win against the Rays, because that was looking like that could be ugly too, but they were able to rally late with the Jake Berger home run and then take Sunday's game. So at least salvaging something from that road trip has got to at least feel decently good for them, right?
It has to. I mean, because that Blue Jays series was kind of brutal.
It was brutal. I mean, between the base running gaff by Danny Mendick, who otherwise is playing pretty well, that was awful. And then the next two games, you just got curb stomped, and you felt like you should have won that first game. You had a late rally going in the 9th inning that went by the boards. It's just that road trip right there was kind of a microcosm of what's been kind of going wrong and what needs to get fixed. You need to play better fundamental baseball, whether it's on the base paths or defensively or, driving in runs. And, you want to get length from your starters. And, Dylan Cease had a pretty solid game against the Rays, but, you had some moments in this road trip where the Sox starting pitching just wasn't as sharp as you'd like it. Michael Kopech wasn't as sharp. Lucas Giolito wasn't as sharp. And I'm not as worried about that. I think they'll be fine. It's just, you wish you could have gotten a little more out of that. But, when Lance Lynn comes back, you're hoping that your rotation is going to be as good as it gets.
And he should be back very soon.
Mm-hmm.
He's done a couple of rehab starts in the minors. And I think they said he could be back as soon as like Wednesday.
Yeah. And, with Lance Lynn, you probably have to give him a start or two to kind of get fully back into things. Like, I wouldn't expect him to go deep and far in his first start back. The nature of coming back from a big injury, it's tough. So, I feel like if he looks meh in his first start, it's no real reason to panic. Hell, he could look great. You never know. I'm just saying, like, I think that for his first start back, you have to temper the expectations a little bit. He hasn't pitched yet in a major league game this year.
And I don't think we've talked about this either. Is Tim Anderson, that injury did look terrible, but turns out that it's not as bad as we had thought. They said he could be back in as soon as like 3 weeks.
Yeah, and that's the given timetable. What actually happens remains to be seen. But either way, people were fearing that it was going to be months.
I think the way it looked to start, I think we all thought it was going to be season ender.
Yeah, and you thank God it wasn't season ending. I mean, that would have been a devastating blow to your chances right there. I mean, the Sox have had a tough stretch. You know, they've played some really good teams. The Rays are a good team, even though they're banged up. The Blue Jays, like you said, are a buzzsaw. They're red hot. They're going to play a Dodgers team, though the Dodgers haven't been playing all that great lately. They just got swept by the Pirates, but still, you know, it's not going to be easy. The Dodgers are the Dodgers. The real key here going forward for that team is you got to start winning in your division. You got to beat the Twins. You got to beat the Royals. You got to beat the Tigers. You got to beat Cleveland. Because if you do that, you're going to win the division. The division sucks. But if you can't beat them, then you're going to keep just staying in a hole, basically.
The problem is this team just can't put it together between the injuries and, constant rotating door of players in and players out. There's just no consistency. And, you're not playing your best baseball. And I don't know the fix for that. There's a team in the National League that has sort of an analogous situation, and they just fired their manager.
Yeah, the Phillies. And look what they just did. They had an epic walk-off against the struggling Angels. They've been scoring runs. It wasn't all Joe Girardi's fault. You can't put that all on him.
No,
but
I wouldn't even put. I would say the Philly struggles are way less on Joe Girardi's shoulders than the White Sox are on Tony La Russa's shoulders.
Right.
And the thing is, the Philadelphia media is pretty brutal. And I think that was part of what led to him going. I don't see the White Sox firing Tony La Russa, period.
No.
Let alone mid-season. But I'm just saying is that we have to keep an eye on how Philadelphia Phillies respond to this for the not just these upcoming games or these last couple games, but for the entirety of the season, and just kind of take note mentally of of the results, because I honestly think that it should have been the White Sox that fired their manager well before Philadelphia did.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see any scenario where Tony gets fired this year, no matter what happens. Like, I don't see Jerry Reinsdorf firing his buddy. I really, really don't. Now, if things were to get really bad, and this is just hypothetical, I don't know if there would be a point where Tony would just say, you know what, I've had enough, I'm done. But I feel like it would have to get really bad for that to happen. And there's been a lot of frustrating things about the White Sox. There's a lot of things that they need to do better. There's a lot of reason to be nervous or concerned about the way things are going. But I'm going to say it a million times. As long as you stay afloat in that division, you're going to have a chance at it.
Oh,
and
agreed.
You're absolutely going to have a chance at it.
But, we're going into June. So, I mean, we're not late in the season by any stretch, but we're not in the infancy either. Like, we're a solid chunk into the season. What are we, about roughly a third?
Pretty much.
So, we do know that division is bad, but we also know the White Sox are not nearly as good as they should be.
No, and I mean, there's many reasons for that. I mean, being hurt doesn't help. It's hard to expect a team to play full strength hurt, but the fundamentals just have to be so much better. And you need some of your key guys that haven't been hitting to start hitting. Yohan Moncada needs to wake up. Yasmani Grandal needs to wake up. Those are two huge guys that haven't been playing well. Jose Abreu's picked it the hell up. I mean, he does it pretty much every year. He starts off slow, he picks it up. That's really no surprise.
I just want to throw this out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yohan Moncada has not been the same guy since he caught COVID.
Well, and a lot of people have brought that up. I mean, even last year when he was overall a pretty good ball player, like, defense good, On base, very, very good. You didn't see the power from him last year. And then right now, you're just not seeing much from him offensively at all. Defensively, he looks good, but he's just not driving a lot. And I don't know, every time when I watch him play, he looks so down when he plays. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, he's not the same guy. It's just that fire is not there.
Right. And I don't know if that's just the way he looks. I don't know if that's the way he actually feels, but he doesn't have the body language as someone that's, I don't want to say he doesn't care. I think he cares. He just doesn't look right.
You just said, like, look on his face. All I could think of was that scene from Step Brothers. Is there anything I could work on? No, it's just your face. But with the White Sox, you're right. That division is bad, but they're in third place right now. I think they need to be maintained in second place and then just start chipping away. I don't want to see them having to leapfrog two teams.
Right. And I mean, I can't say this enough. I think the Twins suck. I just don't think they're very good. They're not awful, but they got some good pieces. It's just that pitching is going to completely crumble. You have to take advantage of that. They got some good hit boppers. Can't deny that. They never have the arms. And that's going to catch up to them. I mean, they lost 4 or 5 to the Tigers. I mean, in all honesty, the White Sox are very fortunate to be where they are. Despite being under 500, despite having a rough week, they are very lucky not to be 10 plus games back. I mean, that's just, I'm not trying to talk trash or shit, but that's a fact. Anyone who would pay attention to baseball, White Sox fans themselves would look at this and say, yeah, if they were in the AL East, they'd be miles back. If they were in the AL East, you would already be talking about selling. And you know that right now they're in no position to sell with where they play and what's at stake with them. But they would be so much further back in another division. And they have the opportunity, once they get healthy again, if the gears start going, they start dominating again, they're going to easily overtake it. I really believe that.
Yeah, they would be 13 games out of first in the AL East. And they would be 1, 2, 3, fifth. They would be fifth.
And that's just a testament to how good the AL East is. You got the Yankees, you got the Blue Jays, you got the Rays, and Boston has played a lot better after that awful first month and a half that they had. It's just a very competitive division. If you were in other divisions, you'd be further back too, maybe not quite by that much. But what I'm trying to say is the White Sox door is open and they have to take advantage of that. They are 1 hot month away from completely overtaking everything and putting this all behind them, but they have to do it. And until they don't, you have to keep that expectation on them because they went into this year with World Series aspirations. And I still believe they have the talent to make a postseason run, at least get to the postseason. They're way too talented to not get to the postseason. They just are.
You know what's wild? That the Blue Jays are 8-2 in their last 10 games, and they didn't gain any ground on the Yankees.
Yeah, the Yankees are just winning. I mean, they're not playing great teams, but you got to beat those bad teams, and that's what the Yankees are doing. They beat the Tigers. Who would they play this series before? It might have been, I don't know if it was Baltimore, but they were playing somebody else. They just been taking care of business.
I mean, the Mets as well. Are we going to get another all New York World Series? That
would actually be a lot of fun. Could you imagine these two, this year's Mets team and this year's Yankees team? Could you imagine Aaron Judge and Francisco Lindor in a World Series? That would be fun as hell.
So, yes, I agree with you. But last time it happened was not even that long ago. The whole baseball media were all like, oh my God, this is the World Series everybody's been waiting for. And the ratings were terrible because nobody except diehard baseball fans and people in New York were watching.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were sick of the Yankees.
Yeah, it was just like, okay, don't care. And you didn't have that second market to help boost the ratings.
Right. Even though it is New York.
Yeah, but it was just, but everybody in New York was watching already.
Right. Right. It's not like if it was Dodgers Yankees, you have the, Dodgers big market, Yankees big market.
Yeah. Like if you had Yankees Cubs, that would be a big draw.
You know what the biggest draw of all time would have been? 2003.
Cubs versus Red Sox.
The two curses going at each other. Something had to give.
Yep.
Could you imagine how pissed off the Fox executives were when both those teams blew it?
I remember when that was the playoffs, and I was like, baseball and the TV networks have to be rooting for the Cubs versus the Red Sox. I'm like, that has to be the World Series they're hoping for. And it just did not come to fruition.
People were tired of the Yankees and nobody cared about the Marlins. Like that had to be, I think I actually saw like a newspaper cartoon from 2003. It was a Cubs fan and a Red Sox fan crying in their beer. And in the middle was a guy in a suit with a name tag that said Fox executives. And he was crying and blowing his nose in between them.
Let's see. Trying to see what the lowest rated World Series of all time was.
I think if I'm going to take a guess, I'm going to say the Kansas City Royals, San Francisco Giants, at least in recent years.
So far, I'm looking, and it's 2020, the Dodgers and Tampa.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the circumstances were,
True. And last year was pretty low, too. Braves, Astros. But then let's see, pre-COVID. Let's see.
It also didn't help in 2020 that one of the markets in that World Series was the Tampa Bay Rays.
Yeah, 2012 was a dip, the Giants and Tigers.
2003 had to be down there, right? I know the Yankees were in it, but still.
No, it was actually pretty solid. It's actually pretty good. The Yankees beating the Braves in 99 was actually real good.
Well, that was a hell of a matchup.
The Marlins Indians from 97 was pretty high.
Well, you wouldn't think of those two markets being big, but that was a hell of a series.
Man. So I'm looking at the TV ratings, and this is actually sad because as I go along, I'm like, they just keep going up. And then I'm like, oh, wait, I'm seeing a trend. The ratings in baseball are just so 1986, the Mets and Red Sox. The viewership was over 36 million people.
Which one was this?
86.
86. Okay.
I mean, would you rather go 83?
83.
83.
83. That would have been Baltimore.
Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So there was 36 million people watching in 1986. 2020, 9.7. There hasn't been 20 million viewers since for the World Series since 2016. And the previous time before that would have been (2004). So viewership of the World Series has totally gone down.
Yeah. You know what? I'll say this too about last year's World Series in the postseason. Those commercial breaks, those extended commercial breaks, I mean, those games felt like a lifetime. It's like you're 3 hours in and it's like only the sixth inning. And you're like, good Lord.
Do you know when the last time the World Series wasn't on Fox?
My guess would be the early 90s or the 80s.
It was 1999.
It wasn't on Fox in 99?
Nope, it was on NBC.
Huh.
Then it was Fox the year before.
Right.
NBC. So it looked like Fox and
Oh,
couple years,
yeah,
and then
because
we're
Bob
alternating.
Costas called some of those World Series in the 90s.
Yeah.
Because he called the World Series for the 95 Braves. Yeah. So they kind of did what the Super Bowl does, then rotate networks.
It's weird. It was all like back and forth. So it looked like it was alternating. So between ABC and NBC every year.
Mm-hmm.
Then ABC, NBC. Then in 1990, CBS took it for a bunch of years. Then 1995, it was on both NBC and ABC.
Mm-hmm.
Then Fox, NBC, Fox, NBC, Fox, forever.
It's been Fox since, yeah. As long as I've watched the World Series, it's always been on Fox because 1999, I was 4 or 5 years old.
Should we transition to football a little bit?
Why don't we?
First, I want to take a moment of silence. Marion Barber, former Chicago Bear Marion Barber, died at 38 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And it was sad. You know, he was a very good football player, and from the sound of it, his life really just went downhill after his retirement, and nobody should have to deal with that.
No.
I don't know if what all, were the circumstances, but it would not shock me to hear that if there was CTE involvement,
sure,
because of the way he played. And made me sad because I probably took some I really did like him as a football player, but I did take a lot of jabs at him for that Denver Broncos game where 2 plays of his cost of a win.
Yeah.
The not running out of bounds. He just had two bad plays that cost him the game. And you know what? What does that even matter? It's versus a human's life. So
right.
I feel bad about taking the shots, but rest in peace, Marion Barber.
Absolutely.
The only topic I really have here is, I kind of was sitting around this afternoon going, what position groups for the Bears do I have the most concerns about at this point?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll read you my lists and get your feedback and your opinions. But
sure,
for me, so I split the groups out as linebackers, defensive linemen, edge rushers, cornerback, safety, quarterback, running back, offensive lineman, wide receiver, tight end. And number one for me is the defensive line.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we really went out and tried to make a splash by signing Larry Ogunjobi, and we all know what that happened there. The failing the physical.
That can mean a big difference.
And they signed somebody else that was definitely not their first choice. And in that time frame between when they came to an agreement with Larry Ogunjobi and he took his physical and failed, like they lost out on other guys they could have signed. So they had to pick who they felt was the best. And Jones could be good, but we don't know enough. If he's not able to be the guy that the Bears hope he is and are paying him to be, this defensive front could be a real liability.
It is a concern. It is absolutely a concern. And, speaking of which, you saw that Akeem Hicks got signed by Tampa Bay, right?
Yeah, for way too much money.
Yeah, Poles was not going to do that.
No. And the thing is if Akeem Hicks stays healthy, he's a pretty darn good football player, but I just don't trust him to be able to stay healthy.
Right.
But I mean, this is probably your 53-man roster for the defensive line. Justin Jones, Angelo Blackson, Mario Edwards, Kyrus Tonga, and LaCale London. And of those 5 guys, 4 of those are Ryan Pace guys.
Mm-hmm.
So you have one of your guys. Kyrus Tonga could be decent as a space eater next to Justin Jones, but if Justin Jones doesn't work out like they hope, this line is going to be in trouble, and I think the defense is going to suffer because of it.
Yeah, I agree. That is definitely a point of concern. I mean, you don't hear much about the line because just not a whole lot has been done to it.
Yeah, and people kind of sleep on it. I think that's my biggest concern group right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's valid. I can't really argue that.
Number 2, I have offensive line, and they might be okay. I put them as 2 instead of 1 because I have more hope that the offensive line will be better because of the system that they're playing. And I saw enough good things from Larry Borum and Tevin Jenkins last year, but the fact of the matter remains is that there's just too many unknowns to not rank it high on your questions list. You have Larry Borum who doesn't have a ton of experience. He was a rookie last year and he was a 5th rounder, and you're putting him in a position that he's never played before at left tackle. Tevin Jenkins did he play like 60 snaps last year? You're putting him penciling him as your starting right tackle. Who knows who your right guard is? Lucas Patrick was a guard last year and you're starting him at center. Cody Whitehair isn't the same player that he was when you signed him into that extension.
He's not Whitey coat hair anymore.
Yeah. And, if that right guard is on this roster, I'm hoping it's one of those draft picks really steps up and earns that spot, because if it's Dakota Dozier or Sam Mustipher doing that right guard spot, I'm a little nervous.
Yeah, I mean, you're not the only one who's nervous about the offense. I mean, the offensive line is one of the biggest talking points of this season because you have to develop Justin Fields and you need to protect him. I mean, this is a line that you could look at and say, if everything goes right, it could be fine. But you know what? You feel like along the way, you're going to have injuries. You're going to have guys that don't perform the way you would hope. And you don't have as much insurance. Like, you can piece together a line and have it be good enough. But when you don't have insurance, that's what kind of makes you a little weary.
I do like at this point that the fact that Ryan Poles took so many bites at the apple to get a lineman in this draft, trading back and then getting multiple bites at the apple and
Chomp, chomp, chomp.
chomp, chomp, chomp.
I just picture Ryan Poles in the office. It's like he's got a box of apples just labeled offensive line, just going chomp, chomp, chomp.
And Matt Eberflus walks in. He's like, "Where'd you get those delicious apples?" He's like, "Gallagher Way."
Gallagher Way.
But taking several linemen, you're more likely to get one that pans out. And so I wouldn't be shocked if one of these rookies wins over that right guard spot. And if that's the case, then you essentially have like three out of your 5 starting offensive linemen are essentially rookies. Which is that a bad thing? Not necessarily, but
You just don't know as much what you're going to get.
Yeah. And, it's, you don't have that veteran to kind of anchor things down, but it does allow you, to have that continuity going forward for multiple years,
which is a good thing. And if these coaches are as good as we hope they are, you hope that they can coach up these young rookies to be effective right off the bat. That's what you would like. But like you said last year, it was nice having a guy like Jason Peters, who even if he wasn't past his prime, regardless of that, like he was a good presence to have. That kind of stuff does matter.
Yeah. Like that's why I kept saying is I would not be upset. I mean, I knew based on what Ryan Poles said he wants as offensive line and his players in general, like Jason Peters is the polar opposite, because Jason Peters is a big man. He is not athletic and thin, and Ryan Poles wants players in their 20s, and he's in his 40s. So Jason Peters is not the guy they were looking for. But like I said, if they were like, oh yeah, we're going to bring him in as the swing tackle, I would not have complained at all, because he would be a hell of a swing tackle. He could come in and just play either side and come in with ease because he has so much experience. And not having to play every day or every game, like he'd be nice and fresh, and you would not lose out on anything. You could run your whole playbook without having to worry about him getting bulldozed by somebody. But they didn't see the value in that.
No, Poles doesn't want to be old. He wants to be as young as possible.
True. My number 3 concern is wide receiver. And I'm not nearly as down on this group as a lot of people seem to be. I mean, Darnell Mooney is a 1,000-yard receiver in this league. Watch Byron Pringle's tape, and there's nothing you'll hate on his tape.
No, there's a lot to like. There is a lot to like.
Velus Jones Jr. has speed to burn. Equanimous St. Brown knows the system. Chris Finke is a known commodity to Ryan Poles. They brought him in. The coaches have been raving about Nasimba Webster's speed. Dante Pettis is a known commodity to their wide receiver coach because he coached him previously. Daz Newsome is a speed shift guy. So you have a lot of guys that you could be happy with. And I think, if everybody stays healthy, that you could have a decent wide receiver core. And there's no superstar by any stretch, but there could be enough complementary pieces to make this a complete, core. And you're going to have to rely on, each game, probably some mismatch, because a top cornerback could probably take any one of these wide receivers away, where you couldn't do that with, like a true number 1 wide receiver. So you're going to have to find the mismatches here. But the big question is that I didn't even think about until I heard somebody else mention it, is what happens if Darnell Mooney goes down for a serious injury? Then how confident are we with this wide receiver group?
That would be pretty bad.
That's why I went from, I don't think it's that bad, and I don't. But they are so thin at the top end that a serious injury to their success depends on Darnell Mooney being as good or better than last year.
Right.
So that got me like, uh-oh. So that's why I moved that up higher than it would have been, a few days ago. My number 4 is the edge rushers. So last year, the Bears had 49 team sacks, which was actually really good. They were one of the tops in the league.
And that was without Khalil Mack for half the season.
Right. But then I started like, okay, where did all these sacks come from? You got
Robert Quinn.
Yeah, a big chunk of those were Robert Quinn, but Khalil Mack gave you 6. He's gone. Akeem Hicks gave you 3.5, gone. Bilal Nichols gone. Deshaun Gibson gone. Kendall Vildor gave you 1. He's still there, but he's probably not going to play nearly as much. Cassius Marsh, Eddie Goldman. From the guys they lost in free agency or trades, they're missing 16 sacks from last year. And Robert Quinn, I'm not writing him off by any stretch, but there's no way he's going to have 18.5 sacks.
Yeah, no. I mean, that he broke the all-time Bears record. I mean, to ask him to do that again would be pretty much impossible.
I would say if he gets 10 to 12, you'd have to be real happy. So then let's say conservatively, let's give him 11 sacks this year. I mean, it's not conservative. Let's give him 11 sacks this year. I think that's a fair number. So that's 7.5 sacks you lost there on top of the 16 from missing players. You're looking at, 23.5 sacks that you have to figure out how to replace.
Yeah, that's tough. And you drafted the one kid and just not as much was done. So I don't think you're going to see quite as much edge rush success this year as you did last year.
And that's, going to be problematic because I looked at the top 10 defenses from last year and they averaged 40 sacks per season. And the Bears were at 49, even though they were the 22nd defense. But the Bears are going to have to get around 40 sacks to, I would say, to have any possibility of being a top 10 defense. So, if you say 11 to Robert Quinn, I think Gibson has to get into the double digits in sacks this year.
Yeah.
If he does, this is all doable. If he doesn't, then you're in trouble.
Yeah. Edge rush. I almost would put edge rush another slot higher. If that is one I am pretty concerned about. You lost a lot of production and you didn't really replace much. And the one guy, the one like key guy you replaced with was a rookie. And Harrison fucking Bader just led off with a triple.
I hate Harrison Bader so much. But my number 5 and probably the last, if I'm ranking these cornerbacks still, Jalen Johnson, I'm still very high on him. I think he's going to respond to the clear message that the coaching staff is sending him. And making him run with the twos, that's a message. They're telling him to get on board. And he didn't show up to the voluntary camp. I'm assuming that they're sending a message like, be here, be available, buy into our system, and let's play football. But, we know what he can do and we like it. Kyler Gordon is apparently going to be the real deal. But again, what if one of those guys goes down? You don't have, you didn't bring in other guys to play. So who fits in behind there? Who are these other cornerbacks that you expect to play.
Right. There, it's another one of those things where depth is just a big issue.
Yeah, I mean, Kendall Vildor is going to probably get a lot of snaps because Tavon Young, Thomas Graham Jr., Duke Shelley are, like they're your nickel guys. They're, nickel type backs, like your outside guys. You've got three. So I'm guessing, if something happens with Kyler Gordon or Jalen Johnson, Kendall Vildor steps up, or Thomas Graham. And though they were questionable last year, we saw a couple of nice things at Thomas Graham, but Kendall Vildor looked like just hot dookie.
Yeah.
Oh. So I don't know. There's still a lot of question marks on this team. And, somebody asked me if they could be last year's Bengals.
I mean, I
said,
know there were holes on the Bengals, but
I said anything's possible. This is the NFL.
Yes,
but it's not likely. And I'm a big Bears fan, and I drink the Kool-Aid. I drink it by the gallon. I probably should put a wooden spoon holster on my belt. But I just don't see it. I mean, the favorable things of the weak schedule compared to the previous year. I think your defense will be much improved. I would not be shocked if I expect them to be at least a top half defense, maybe even as high as 12, 13. And if they can get the running game going, I think in order to be a good team. So last year, they were 15th in the league in time of possession at 30 minutes and 19 seconds per game. And I think they're going to have to be closer to 32 minutes a game to be competitive. And the teams that did that were the Packers and the Titans last year. So the Bears are going to have to really be successful running the ball and playing good defense if they're going to have any hope to be last year's Bengals. They're not going to do it with explosive plays like the Bengals did because they don't have a Jamar Chase. And again, not a knock on anybody else. It's just there's a difference. But Darnell Mooney had a great season last year, but it was not a Jamar Chase season.
Right. I mean, Jamar Chase turned the world upside down, and that's really hard to do. He was one of the main factors the Bengals got to where they were. It's just to find that again would be just really unlikely, especially with who they have. And like you said, we like Darnell Mooney, we like Byron Pringle, but if you expect them to do what freaking Jamar Chase did last year, yeah, not happening.
Yeah, or Devontae Adams, or, they're not going to put up these elite numbers, and you're not going to have those explosive plays that keep you in games. The Bears next year, I think, or this coming year, their ceiling is, and that I don't even like to say this because they were actually a really good team, would be a Titans type. But they don't have a Derrick Henry. They don't have the offensive line of the Titans, but that type of team where they stay in games against even these really good teams that have high explosive offenses by playing good defense and controlling the clock.
Right.
So I think the
fucking Cardinals tied it.
So I think if the Bears are to have any hope of success, they've got to get up to around 32 minutes of time of possession and be right outside the top 10 in defense, or even sneaking into that top 10 in defense, which I don't think is likely. I think they could be, in the 13, 14 range, but anything's possible. If Robert Quinn puts up another 16, 17 sack season, and Travis Gibson puts up a 12 sack season, and Justin Jones is what they advertised as, that could change the dynamic. Or if Eddie Jackson, having a real running mate next to him makes him play like old Eddie Jackson, things could happen. But I'm not banking on it.
Right.
Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, I've said my piece. I fucking hate the Cardinals.
They are really terrible.
I fucking hate them. God, and ESPN has to show them celebrating tying the game in slow motion from every goddamn angle.
And it has to be somebody with a dumb name, too, that does it.
God.
Lars Nootbaar. But that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank everybody so much for listening. Please hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, Spotify, etc. Share this podcast with your friends. That's how we grow the show. Follow us on social media at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com, or ShyFanPat2, and AlexanderJPatCreative.com for all the cool stuff that Alex does. And again, thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like Remember, New Yorkers, smoking crack is not legal on planes.
Bears 31 to -7.
The Bears.
Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.